Ayubovan. Today is a memorable day for us at Vishwaniketan International Peace Center in Sri Lanka. I say this for two reasons. First, I would like to highlight that today we are hosting episode 12, the final episode of A String of Pearls, the series of intergenerational dialogues that we commenced in March 2021 to felicitate Dr. A.T. Aryaratne on his 90th birthday. Second, I consider it an honor and a blessing to have with us today the long-standing friend of Dr. A.T. Aryaratne and Vishwaniketan, the world-renowned scientist, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, as our distinguished speaker for this grand finale of the series. Today's dialogue is on the theme doing mode versus being mode. On behalf of Vishwaniketan, I wish to warmly welcome Dr. John Kabat-Zinn and all our friends from Sri Lanka and overseas. We are hosting this final episode to coincide with the last full moon day of the year, the Unduwap full moon day. This day commemorates the arrival of Sanghamitta Theri in Sri Lanka with a bow sapling from the sacred Jayashree Mahabodhi in India during the month of Unduwap. Sanghamitta Theri was the daughter of Emperor Ashoka of India. The sacred Bodhi sapling was brought to Sri Lanka in a golden bowl and thereafter planted in the Mahameuna garden in Anuradhapura. After landing here and delivering this precious gift to Sri Lanka, she was responsible for establishing the Bhikkhuni Sasana during the month of Unduwap. Let me now introduce you to our distinguished speaker by quoting Dr. A.T. Aryaratne's keynote address as the chief guest of the 112th academic sessions of the Sri Lanka Medical Association held in March 1999. To quote Dr. Ari, last month I spent a day with Dr. John Kabat-Zinn in Boston. He has successfully implemented what is called the stress reduction clinic at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. Here is a concrete example of combining medical science with meditation. Dr. Kabat-Zinn explained how the words medicine and meditation come from the Latin medere, which means to cure. Medere itself is said to be derived from an earlier Indo-European root meaning to measure. The word measure in this context has a deeper meaning compared to dimensions of an object based on an external standard. Medicine seen in this light, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn says, is right inward measure, close quote. Dr. John Kabat-Zinn is a scientist, writer, and meditation teacher engaged in bringing mindfulness into the mainstream of medicine and society. He is Professor Emeritus of Medicine at the University of Massachusetts Medical School, the creator of the Stress Reduction Clinic and the Center for Mindfulness in Medicine. The stress reduction program created by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn is widely known as Mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, and reached every nook and corner of the world. He is the author of many groundbreaking books, to name a few: Full Catastrophe Living, Using the Wisdom of Your Body and Mind to Face Stress, Pain, and Illness, Wherever You Go, There You Are, Mindfulness Meditation in Everyday Life, and co-authored with his wife, Myla, Everyday Blessings, the Inner Work of Mindful Parenting, Coming to Our Senses, Healing Ourselves and the World Through Mindfulness. His work has contributed to a growing movement of mindfulness into mainstream institutions in our societies such as medicine, healthcare, and hospitals, schools, corporations, prisons, and professional sports. Dr. Kabat-Zinn received his PhD in molecular biology from MIT in 1971. Dr. Kabat-Zinn's research between 1979 and 2002 focused on mind-body interactions for healing and on the effects of mindfulness-based stress reduction on the brain, body, and the immune system. During his career, he has trained groups of judges, business leaders, lawyers, clergy, Olympic athletes, and environmental activists in mindfulness. More than 750 medical centers and clinics nationwide and worldwide, as well as now, use the MBSR. We rejoice that Dr. John Kabat-Zinn accepted our humble invitation. Now I would like to introduce Tiara and Sanara, who have been moderating this series for the past 10 months. I hope, Dr. Kabat-Zinn, you would remember meeting Sanara as a little kid way back in 2007 in Harvard. Both Tiara and Sanara have been active participants of Vishwaniketan retreats from their childhood. They have also helped Vishwaniketan in organizing retreats for kids. Tiara and Sanara have already forged their own identity, amplifying their voices on social and environmental issues. With this brief introduction, I would like to request Tiara to commence today's dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Charika, for that wonderful introduction. We're so grateful to have you here today, Dr. Kabat-Zinn. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. And thank you for asking. Yeah, I'm doing fine. Under the circumstances, I have to say, given that there's so much pain and stress in the world.
That's great to hear. Even the COVID situation is bad in Sri Lanka, but we're doing great as well. We're taking precautions. Before we move on, before we move on to the questions, I would like to invite Dr. Ari to share a few words with us.
I'm so delighted, I'm so happy that Dr. Kabat-Zinn was able to you were able to get him on, and I don't want to take his time. Actually, I'm delighted he's with us. We have to learn a lot from him. So with that, I will come, and I won't speak anything more. I'm waiting to listen to him this coming hour. Thank you.
You know, let me just say that even if you're silent through the whole thing, which I hope you're not, your silence speaks volumes. And I bow to you for the entire arc of everything that you've given to the world. Just remarkable.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Let's jump right into our first question for today in today's dialogue. You started off as a trained molecular biologist. In the past few decades, you've become a world-renowned mindfulness teacher. If I may be more specific, you founded the Mindfulness-based Stress Reduction Program, or the MBSR, which is practiced by millions of people across the world. We're curious to know what inspired you to journey down this path, Doctor.
This is a very challenging question, and I will come at it from a number of different angles, because although there tends to sometimes be a focus on people who have accomplished one thing or another and how they got that way, how they got to where they got to, I think there are some kind of underlying principles that really apply to every single one of our lives. And I don't want to, make it seem like there's anything special about what unfolded, other than the fact that everything is insanely special for all of us. And the more we recognize that, I think the healthier we will be as individuals and also as societies. So I was thinking about this conversation, and you term it intergenerational conversation, and I love that I'm talking to you grandchildren, with the elders listening in, so to speak, or holding the space, because that's really what life is all about, is a kind of ongoing emergence where we pass on, in some sense, whatever it is that we've been able to understand or contribute to the next generation, to take it to even deeper and more expansive levels. And so I'm really honored to be in conversation with both of you to kind of drill down into this kind of thing. And since you called your whole series in celebration of Dr. Ariadne's birthday, A String of Pearls, and I happen to be the last of the pearls, so to speak, in terms of, if you want to call the speakers the pearls, let's not forget that the string of pearls depends on the string. And often we focus on the pearls, but we forget that there's some kind of unifying thread that actually turns them into a string of pearls and holds it all together. And we could say that that unifying thread is the intrinsic capacity of human beings for wisdom and for compassion, for living an embodied ethical life that optimizes well-being and health on the individual body level, but also optimizes well-being far beyond one's small sense of self. And the deep meditation practice actually illuminates and clarifies the fact that whoever we think we are, that's not who we are. So our small sense of self is such a small part of who we actually are that, in some sense, the curriculum or the challenge of a lifetime is to live our way into the full dimensionality of our being. And none of us know what we're capable of when we do that. And then, since we're not isolated pearls, but we're in some kind of string, or even, I refer beyond the string, a network or Indra's net, so to speak, a kind of multifaceted image that is one of profound interconnectedness, so that all nodes are deeply interconnected with the other nodes. In my own case, to come back to your question then, it's really hard to say what the original motivations were, because they have so much to do with the family that I grew up in and my love for science, but also my love for art, because my mother was an artist, my father was a scientist. So I was, like, in some sense, born into a community beyond just my parents, where certain kinds of things were profoundly appreciated: the life of the mind, and the life of deep seeing, and the life of expressing what's in one's heart in various kinds of ways, whether through scientific discovery or through artistic expression and discovery. So from the time I was a little boy, just as it must be the case with the two of you growing up in your family, I kept asking myself, what is it that's, like, most important? And watching what my parents were doing, and also seeing the limitations of what my parents were seeing, because I'm a different person. I was younger, and I was, in some sense, seeing that their two worlds of science and art could be unified. And that's where, as soon as I heard about the Dharma when I was about 21 years old, in almost no time, during a lecture on Zen at MIT by a man named Philip Kapleau, who wrote a book called The Three Pillars of Zen, during that talk, I just had a moment where I recognized this is what I've been looking for my whole life. And I started practicing mindfulness meditation that day in originally the Zen kind of constellation of practices and perspectives. And I just happened to never stop. So that's what that's what sort of got me on the path, so to speak. And once on the path, I kept asking the question, what is my job on the planet? by which I meant, what would I love so much I'd pay to do it? That there would be no obstacle that would be too big to actually attempt to bring into the world something that felt right. And after 10 years of meditating, basically on that koan, on a meditation retreat at the Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts, about day 10 of a 14-day retreat, I had this kind of vision that I could bring the Dharma into hospitals, which of course are what would be called dukkha magnets. Everybody who goes to the hospital is in some sense pulled in through suffering, through dukkha, through pain, through stress, and then make these practices available to them in ways that would optimize their potential to hear it, without dumbing them down or simplifying them, but just trying to, in some sense, find the thread, find the door in that would lead to a lifetime of ongoing practice and development. And that's how MBSR came into practice. And just to say one more thing, I knew that if it was going to have any kind of effect in the world, I couldn't just do something in one hospital and then let it speak for itself anecdotally. Because no matter how much the patients in the program benefited from it, if I didn't study it scientifically and write papers about it and put them in the medical and scientific literature, it would never go anywhere. It'd be an anecdotal, one-time thing that everybody would be able to dismiss if they knew about it at all. So I started writing papers describing it first, and then studies of what we were actually finding. And I think that led ultimately to an exponential explosion of interest in medicine and science and neuroscience and healthcare on the subject of mindfulness. And mindfulness really is a big umbrella term in this sense, which really subtends the wisdom of Dharma, a universal Dharma that even transcends the Buddha Dharma, but is completely coextensive with it and is on a profound ethical foundation. So tell me if that was too long an answer, because I don't want to go on given your time constraints, but I tried to answer as honestly as I could.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That answer was absolutely beautiful. I think Sanara and I could relate to that on a personal level, because I think at the end of the day, like you said in your answer, everything is interconnected. So the communities you're born into it all helps you to find your purpose on this planet. And so for both of us, we look up to Dr. Ari and Dr. Charika as inspirations, as our role models. And I've developed an interest towards the field of law, but also taking into consideration my personal passion towards the environment, particularly into the ocean conservation. And Sanara similarly also trying to collaborate with different people from across villages of Sri Lanka to bridge the gap and create harmony. I think end of the day, it really helped us to find our purpose on this planet and what we want to work towards in the future. And I think that's something crucial, and it's an important message for a lot of young people out there who often don't have the guidance and support to find their purpose and to find what they're passionate about in life. So I think your answer would definitely help a lot of young people out there to be inspired by the people around them, by the communities, and to find what drives them in life.
I love that you're saying that. And if you don't mind my following up, because I know you have questions and we only have limited time, but I think there's something underneath the questions. And when we get into true dialogue, it's very different from discussion. What we're really doing is inquiring together about the nature of reality and the nature of self. And no matter what your family has accomplished or what the people that you admire have accomplished, no matter how old or young you are, the real challenge in this life, it seems to me, is to ask, well, what kind of flower am I? How can I recognize that my contribution is as valid as anybody else simply by being alive. And then how can I best inquire about what is possible in this short lifespan that's not somebody else's work to do, but my true swadharma, so to speak, my true karmic assignment. And if it takes you years and decades to figure that one out, that's okay. You can do a lot of good stuff along the way, but keeping in mind that we're so insanely beautiful, even if you don't feel good about yourself. And a lot of people, unfortunately, there's a lot of depression because of the stress, and COVID's made everything worse. And so everybody's anxious and not feeling so good about themselves. But these practices can help you actually remember your own intrinsic beauty and creativity and possibility. And that's trustworthy. And that's really lies at the heart of the Dharma, it seems to me, that when you take your seat, it's like taking a stand in your life and not falling into narratives that your mind will continue to produce or your emotional reactivity, but to give yourself over to the subject of our talk today is about the domain of being. So to drop into being, so to speak, and recognize that the unfolding of being in the form of you is as valid as anything else on the planet, as valid as any tree or any flower or any life form. And we have the extra capacity, it seems, to be able to hold that in awareness and then listen very, very deeply to what is called for that we might feel a deep affinity for. And when people find their way like that when they're young, it contributes to the world in ways that you can't think out in advance. You just have to trust it. And then keep listening deeply. And in that sense, we're having this kind of like not a discussion about possibilities, but a deep dialogue, which ultimately is a deep dialogue with oneself on the one hand, and with the entire universe on the other hand.
That's a lovely follow-up, Doctor. I agree with you and what you said, because this is very challenging times we're living in, and especially as youth, it's so easy to be unmotivated during these times. So I think it's an important message that being alive and you simply living, you are able to contribute immensely towards the globe. And even though you might not be able to find what you're passionate about during your teenage years, you can gradually work towards it, and towards the latter part of your life, actually find what you're passionate about and contribute to society. So that's a really important message, Doctor, and we're so glad we had that conversation with you.
Thank you. And thank you for saying that. And I'll just, what you said strikes me that, because of COVID, and you had mentioned in your communications with me that you'd seen something that I did with our Surgeon General a while ago, a conversation with Dr. Vivek Murthy. And he just put out an alert, a bulletin, saying that the levels of stress and anxiety and depression among adolescents is now skyrocketing, double what it was a couple of years ago. And so I think that this is a very urgent message to put out there, and that is that there's nothing wrong with you, that you're already okay. But the mind can generate all sorts of thoughts that I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, and then you develop these stories to prove to yourself that there is really something wrong with you and you're not okay. And what these practices and what the Dharma is actually about is, as I said, actually to propose that to a first approximation, you're not only okay, you're perfect, exactly as you are, along with all your imperfections. And then you've got this superpower, which we call human awareness, which is very different from the superpower of thought, which is also wonderful, but can be very self-destructive when there's no wisdom or self-compassion associated with it. So if teenagers even hear this message, it's a very powerful antidote to the lockdowns and the ways in which we can't really give full expression to our energies in the teenage years or in the early 20s or whatever, because of these societal constraints that have to do with a virus that we are having a terrible time actually getting under our control. Again, to a large degree because of greed, hatred, and delusion in various ways that emerge differently in different societies.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for that beautiful response. And I do agree that, especially with the current pandemic, so many teenagers mainly are going into depressions and questioning themselves. But what we need to understand is this is just the beginning of our journey, where we are really figuring out what we want to do with ourselves in the future. And I think with Dr. Ari and Dr. Charika, they've really given us the light and shown us the direction in which we should go through. And it's our journey to create our own path and figure things out ourselves and learn how we can give our own contribution to society like they did in their past and still do.
Exactly.
I think that a lot of teenagers should understand that this is just a time where we're learning about ourselves as well as about society. We're figuring out what the real world is like. And when we come to some point of adulthood, we will know what our purpose is on this planet and work towards fulfilling it. With that, I would like to move on to our second question for today. Sri Lanka is an island that has been blessed with the ever-blossoming seeds of Buddhism, especially in the Theravada tradition. Over 2,500 years ago, the Buddha preached the Sattara Satipatthana Sutta, also known as the Four Contemplations of Mindfulness. What aspects of this Buddhist lineage influenced you in developing a highly secular modern-day concept of mindfulness?
The answer basically is all aspects of it. I mean, the Satipatthana Sutra is so fundamental, along with the Anapanasati Sutra. So the core teachings on mindfulness, going right back to the historical Buddha, are so simple. I mean, it's basically the Four Noble Truths. And interestingly enough, the Four Noble Truths are actually framed in a medical sort of format, where first you have the diagnosis. The first noble truth is the diagnosis. It's often completely misunderstood as life is suffering, is the way they often said. It was never life is suffering. It's simply there is the issue of suffering. There is suffering. So that's the diagnosis is dukkha, which is a very hard word to translate into English or any other language, I think. And it has so many different aspects because it's really about like being a little out of joint. You know, it's like a wheel that's the axle is a little bit bent at the center so that the axle can't actually rotate the wheel and have it turn true. So that's the kind of dissatisfactory nature whenever one attaches to or clings to a kind of fixed sense of I, me or mine. And so the second noble truth is the ideology. In other words, what is the root cause of this dis-ease of dukkha or stress? It's sometimes even translated as stress by many modern translators. And what is the root cause of this suffering? And the root cause is some degree of self-identification, of craving, of wanting something, of a kind of an attachment to some kind of view. And so it's the attachment itself that's the cause of the suffering, not the view, but the attachment. And then the third noble truth is the prognosis. And the prognosis is a very happy prognosis. It says that there's a potential for liberation from this kind of suffering, this kind of delusion this kind of attachment, this kind of self-identification. And then the fourth noble truth is the treatment plan. You know, it's like a purely medical thing, the treatment plan. How do you go about dealing with this level of dis-ease? And then it's called the Eightfold Noble Path. And mindfulness is the seventh of 8 path factors, but they're all interrelated, as many scholars and teachers say, so that if you go in through one, you have all the others. And I won't go into all 8 of them, but it's basically, you know, right or wise, you know, speech, wise action, wise livelihood, right attention. So how we understand this is like when you sit down and actually practice watching your own mind and putting out the welcome mat for whatever arises so that nothing is a disturbance or a distraction. Then all of a sudden you move from the domain of being, where a lot of people misunderstand meditation as, now I have to force myself to have a special meditative experience. And the fact is my mind's all over the place and driving me crazy. So this isn't working. And I stop and I can't meditate. It's for other people, or it's stupid. And you just judge it and discard it. Not understanding that what's unfolding, you don't have to change any of your experience. The invitation is to just embrace it in awareness and with loving, you know, sort of a kindness, so to speak, or acceptance, and just notice this is the nature of mind, that it waves, just like the ocean waves, just like the Indian Ocean is waving. So that's the nature of the mind to wave, but the ocean only waves on the surface. It doesn't wave 30 or 40 meters down. There, it's always calm, and it's the same with the mind. So if you begin to discover that for yourself, not read about it in books or bow down to statues, but to discover it inside yourself, what you're really doing is not just discovering something, but you're recovering something, your original nature, and you're uncovering and recovering something true about yourself, your truest nature. And as I was saying earlier, there's nothing the matter with you in essence. Like you're perfect just as you are, including all the imperfections. That's what this diagnosis and treatment plan are telling you. And so you don't have to try to get anywhere in meditation. If you think meditation is about having some special meditative state, you've gotten off on the wrong foot. You could be on the wrong foot for 40, 50, 60 years. But if you realize, oh, it's not about that. It's about being the knowing that your awareness already is. So it could be good, bad, ugly, uncomfortable, painful. None of that's a problem. Then right in this moment, you're discovering the subject we're supposed to be talking about today, the being mode. It's just like awareness holds whatever is unfolding, including all the thoughts you don't want to be having, or the feelings that you don't want to be having, or the loneliness or the anger. And then you can ask deep questions about the nature of awareness. Is my awareness lonely? Is my awareness angry? Is my awareness sad or hurting? And this is a kind of door into liberation. And it's free. It's like and the door is open. So it's not like you have to study for 1,000 years. In fact, the true study is to just take your seat and pay attention.
I couldn't have asked for a better response, Doctor. And I think even through the Buddha's journey with his samsaric journey of self-awakening and eventually awakening, helping the awakening of all other human beings as well, teaches us that it's a slow process of almost self-discovery and understanding the purity you were born with and how you can thereafter spread it to the rest of the world. And once again, I thank you so much for giving us such beautiful answers and inspiring so many of us, and that I'm sure are listening to this dialogue.
Let me just respond to one thing you said, Sonara, and that is spreading it to the rest of the world. It will spread itself. So it's like a virus. It's like COVID, the Dharma, but it's infectious, but it's not toxic. It's kind of like what we call a meme, which is like a gene, but it contains a whole universe of way of being. And you know yourself, because you've had the privilege of being born into a family where this is kind of like the default mode. But when you encounter somebody who's truly present, you never forget it. And it immediately brings up feelings of love in you, because, and often people will start crying. I've seen this happen around His Holiness the Dalai Lama, but it can happen with anybody. I mean, you know, people felt that way about, you know, Vimala Thakur, and they felt that way about Krishnamurti, that, you know, you come in touch with somebody who actually is inhabiting the present moment or the domain of being fully, with no agenda, no personal axes to grind. What it looks like and feels like is pure love. And it is infectious. It's like all of a sudden you feel like the embrace, like of a mother who's, doesn't matter what you've done, the love is so profound that you come home to yourself. And that's what the meditation practice really offers. So even in this time of COVID, when so many people are isolated and feeling locked down, metaphorically as well as literally, or depressed somewhat, or anxious, or bored, or, you know, riven by emotions of one kind or another, or you don't have to make any of that go away or change it. All one needs to do is kind of take a few moments and be kind to yourself, and don't do any more doing, but just see if you can explore the domain of being. As long as you're locked down, you might as well lock yourself, you know, open the key to your own heart, and just take a few moments and feel your body, bring awareness to the body breathing and lying down or sitting or whatever. And in that way, you can actually, it's not like, oh, when COVID's over, then I'll get into meditation, I'll start reading the Satipatthana Sutra and studying books and stuff like that. No, you're the most appropriate object of investigation and study. And so if you're listening to this dialogue and the other string of the other pearls on this string, then you've probably got more than enough motivation to actually listen very, very deeply to your own heart, and to let the domain of doing take care of itself for a while, and you just rest in the domain of being. And then when the time is right, your doing will come out of being, and it will be an entirely different doing that has everything to do with wisdom and compassion and kindness and creativity and imagination, rather than what's wrong with me, I'm such a mess, and I don't know when I'm ever gonna be happy. It's like, there's only one time to be happy, and you don't need to be attached to the happiness, but this is the moment. If your breath is coming into the body and you're not choking, hey, that's an occasion for being happy. And then the breath goes out, and then the next breath magically comes in. I mean, this is miraculous, and you can be aware of it, even more miraculous. So it's a very good starting point.
Thank you, Doctor, for that beautiful response. I too personally agree with you to say that Dharma is definitely infectious. And I think its unique ability for anyone across the globe to relate to it and implement the Four Noble Truths. So if you're going through problems in your life, you're able to question, identify the problem, identify the root cause of it, and cater solutions in order to solve it. I think that is an extremely complex and unique solution that anyone across the globe could apply into their lives when they come across problems. And so it's definitely something a lot of people can use, and it is infectious.
Can I respond to what you're saying? Because, you know, sometimes people feel like they have to solve the problem. Okay, and usually you think, I have to solve it with thinking. And then you feel like, I'm not capable of solving it with thinking. There's something wrong with me, or the problem is too big, and then you get depressed. But that's not the only way to approach problems. You can also approach problems like to just see that it is what it is, And who's making it into a problem in the first place? Maybe the mind is creating the problem. A lot of problems, the nature of what we consider to be problems, if you just hold them in awareness, you don't have to solve them, because you know what happens to them? They dissolve on their own. So to a very large degree, if you just hold things in awareness, it's a radical act of sanity. And it's a radical act of love, because you're basically healing these sort of energies that are often pulling us apart and telling us we're not good enough or we're inadequate, when that's just not true. And most of our thoughts are so not true, but we believe them, and that's its own form of disease. So I think the more you emphasize that kind of non-doing, the more people will feel like, okay, I get this. Because as soon as you emphasize how people should be or what they should do, then of course everybody, it's like a New Year's resolution. Everybody says, yes, I'm really enthusiastic about this. And then 3 months later, whatever it is, they're not doing it, whether it's meditating or anything else. But if people understand that mindfulness meditation is really about life itself, it's like every moment, how am I? Not just when I'm sitting or doing a body scan lying down, but every moment, how am I in relationship to the universe? Never mind my own thoughts and emotions or body. And there's no place to go, nothing to do, nothing to attain, as it says in the Heart Sutra, this non-dual sort of Mahayana Buddhist teaching, that what is here now is the curriculum. And it doesn't matter whether you're washing the dishes or taking the children to school or dealing with COVID or whatever it is, you're already embodied wakefulness, if you remember, which is another meaning of the Pali term sati. It has to do with memory. So a lot of this is just, okay, so you've seen all this string of pearls, but do you remember any of it? And even if you remember one thing, that would be good enough, because you'll connect the thread, and the thread will keep you going.
Thank you for that beautiful response, Doctor. And I think our next question actually connects with the follow-up answer you gave to Sanara's question. In your words, how would you describe the contrast between the doing mode and the being mode? And I think especially it's important in the current context and situation, the world we live in, where a lot of teenagers are disconnected from our planet due to them being exposed to different electronic gadgets and a lot of technology out there. So could you elaborate on that, Doctor?
Yeah, this was a problem long before the smartphones. Even before smartphones, I can just tell those of you who never lived in a world without, smartphones, which are really supercomputers that you have in your pocket and also networked to the entire, universe. So you've got the internet, and then you've got Indra's net we talked about earlier. So this is a really profound question, and I wouldn't pretend to be able to give a definitive response to it, because no one knows where this is going, because we're being, in some sense, dragged or entrained into a digital world of perpetual distraction. There's always infinite information and infinite stuff, and a lot of it's really toxic, especially for teenagers. On TikTok, they tell me, and Instagram and so forth, because the algorithms actually are developed to promote a feeling of discomfort, of dukkha. They're promoting dukkha. They're promoting negative self-images. And they have many, many very clever ways of doing this. And how are you going to be able to immunize yourself against this kind of thing, where you've got networked supercomputers behind what's going on? And if anybody is interested in what's really going on, you should watch this Netflix movie called The Social Dilemma, which comes, a lot of the people who are featured in that movie are mindfulness practitioners, but when they were younger, they created these algorithms without really being aware of what the negative consequences of them. So, but we're not dead yet as human beings, and we are analog beings. So your question is a really profound one, and that's where you're right. It links to the domain of being. If you learn how to drop in, and we all have to-do lists. We're all constantly driving ourselves crazy about what we're not getting done or how it's all too much and I can't handle any of it. But what about a to-be list? What about making a to-be list which is outside of time? The present moment is timeless. So you got all the time in the world, and you don't have to fill it, because no matter what you can see on your phone, actually, when you start to pay attention to your own mind and body sitting in meditation, it's a lot more interesting and a lot healthier. And rather than filling the mind, what you're doing is actually inviting the mind to empty, or to understand that in some deep way, it's already empty of any kind of true self-existing permanence that we then lock onto and think that's the way life is. And we build, thought structures and stories out of it, which actually imprison us. So because I'm not a digital native and you are, I hesitate to actually give you any kind of prescription, because I'm basically too old to do that. I mean, I have my own, challenges with kind of holding everything in some kind of balance. But I'm very concerned about my grandchildren, because of the world. They're much younger than you, because of the world that they're entering into. And I would say that, so to come back to being and doing, when the doing comes out of being, as I said, it's an entirely different kind of doing, and there's wisdom in it, and there's equanimity in it, and there's the possibility for sort of a kind of ethical equilibrium that is unperturbable, that you're not going to betray yourself and you're not going to harm other people, and your awareness will keep you from doing that even when there's a tendency to go in that direction, or it will bring you back. So it's self-healing as opposed to self-harming. And then as you learn to reside in the domain of being, and your doing comes out of being, then it's like a love affair. It's a love affair with the world. You'll have meaningful work. You'll have meaningful relationships. You'll have meaningful engagement with, the fact that the planet is on fire and we've given it a fever. And there's so many different challenges that humanity has to get its act together globally. And I'm sorry to say this in a way, but it's your generation that's going to really not only suffer the consequences of it not happening, but you're really the hope, because the older people are too locked into a certain kind of framework where maybe they even have conflicts of interest, that they're making money off of the heating of the planet in one way or another. And we need to wake them up to the fact that, there's no point in rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
I agree with you, Doctor. I think that's a beautiful response. I think being born in this generation where I think from a really young age, we're exposed to a lot of tech and we grew up with it. I think it's easy to get lost in the type of social media platforms and technology we're exposed to. And like you said, a lot of content that comes across on these platforms are negative content, where most often they're not, as teenagers, comparing our body image or everything that we have to another teenager out there, constantly viewing these social media stars as our idols. And I think we often get lost trying to do a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily translate or impact our lives in any positive way. So we're often doing stuff without thinking and without actually being aware of what we're doing. So I think your answer, where you describe the contrast between the doing and the being mode, and how it's important that whatever we do has to come out of our being mode, where we're aware of our actions, we can form meaningful connections, is an important message for teenagers. So I think being present in the moment, being aware of your actions, it definitely would have a positive impact on our lives.
You can also use your phone as a meditation object. You can notice, for instance, every time the impulse arises to check your phone for messages or whatever it is. And notice that. I heard recently that on average, people check their phone 270 times a day. Maybe it's even more for teenagers, I don't know. So okay, you can turn that into a mindfulness practice. Be aware of every time, like there's a moment where you're okay. And the next moment you think, I wonder whether I got a text or a message or a notification or something like that. And you have to check. You may be missing something important might be happening, and you notice the mind gets a little crazed because you feel like I'm not okay the way I am. I need to check the phone because then I'll be more complete once I have this anxiety. It's almost like smoking a cigarette. It's a kind of addictive, and the technology was designed. I know the people who designed the iPhone, they was designed to be maximally addictive. And that was even before, as I understand it, there were apps. So, this is like you have the entire universe in the phone, but you have a much bigger and wiser universe in your heart. And the more the phone becomes important and digital technology becomes important in our lives, the more we have to balance that with our analog, beautiful result of billions of years of evolution. There's nothing too shabby about being in a human body. There's nothing shabby about that. And yet our education system, because it's not linked to sort of deep inquiry into the nature of mind, has not really delivered everything that it needs to deliver for the challenges that we're facing nowadays on the planet. And I would say that, you two really have the potential to articulate this in ways that, and embody it just for yourselves in ways that could potentially become infectious, just as that negativity of, say, the social media, as we've been seeing, whether it's on the political side or on the body image side for girls, is so toxic. And it just doesn't have to be that way. So the more we can't surrender to that, but we have to understand that. That's why I'm saying you don't have to strive to become something you're not. It's much more an undoing and a non-doing, and recognizing that your beauty is far more powerful and far more multidimensional than even the greatest supercomputer. That right underneath the dome of your own skull is the most complex arrangement of matter in the known universe. And the known universe is very, very big. We haven't discovered any other life forms in it yet, especially the question whether there's intelligent life on this planet even. But the fact is that you've got upwards of 100 billion neurons in here, trillions of connections, synaptic connections, and they are continually changing in different domains of the brain and the body on the basis of experience. So when you take your seat, and it looks a lot, if people say, well, meditation's about nothing, it's like you just sit there like a stone, like a Buddha statue. No, it's not about that at all. You're a universe. You got unimaginable numbers of atoms structured together in molecules, in polymers, and DNA and RNA and protein, and the virus is, COVID is just a piece of RNA coated with protein. And it's undoing us because we don't understand enough how to be in wise relationship with nature. So this is a kind of plea, so to speak, to recognize that there's nothing more beautiful, more complex, and more wonder like the nature of a human being is staggeringly wonderful, full of wonder, inspiring and awe-inspiring, way beyond thought. In the same way as if we discovered life on some other planet, maybe what we need to do is discover intelligent life on our planet while it's still possible for us. And it actually lies right inside us already. And I was just talking about the brain, but it's more than the brain. It's the genome. It's like telomeres and telomerase. It's like every aspect of the human body and mind complex, and societally, our interconnectedness is an opportunity for helping us to wake up to the truly interconnected nature of the universe. And to do that while you're in your teens or early 20s, that's how you change the world. You wake up, the world is already a very, very different place just because you've woken up even a little bit. We don't have to idealize it and walk around saying I'm the Buddha or anything like that. Nobody's saying you're the Buddha, because you are the Buddha, but the more you say it, then the more you're kind of still caught in concepts. But your intrinsic beauty, all you need to look at a newborn baby or a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old, and you say, like, you know, this is like infinite mystery, infinite perfection. And let's keep it going through our 90s and through our hundreds and however long we get to breathe on this planet. Let's keep the adventure going, so to speak. That's what it means to practice mindfulness.
I agree with everything you said, Doctor. And I think especially with our generation, we've become almost attached to our devices that we don't really see the beauty of human life itself and the beauty of nature. And with this pandemic, we've learned that ultimately nature is what's in control. And with the spreading of the virus again, the whole world went into a lockdown. And to imagine that a world that was developing so rapidly every second even came into a standstill just by the spread of a being that can only be seen through an electronic microscope.
Yeah.
And it's about understanding that a human life is so valuable, so much more valuable than any of these billion-dollar devices that we have coming into the world. And what wonders a human being, just one human being, can do in their lifetime is so much more than what a phone or a computer can do. And like you said, that thank you so much for your beautiful response. With
well,
that,
I'm not doing anything really but reflecting back to you who you already are and what you already know. I mean, that's why I'm loving this conversation, because, and hopefully it's not for us, but for whoever is going to be watching this, that to not make heroes out of anybody else, but to actually understand that we're all good enough. You don't have to be perfect. Everybody wants to be perfect and to look perfect, and in terms of body image and so forth. But it might be really good to ask, well, what is good enough for now? And then just befriend that. That's what meditation practice is, like befriend that. If it's time to do the dishes, do the dishes. If you're washing them yourself, are you present while you're washing them? If you're loading the dishwasher, no problem. If you have mechanism, the dishwasher, how do you load the dishwasher? Are you doing it automatically, or are you present for it? The more you are aware of the times you check out of your life, the more you're not checked out in your life. And so it's a kind of love affair with wakefulness, with embodied wakefulness, and with a kind of trusting in your own deepest potential. And I mean, what else is there, to draw upon when, let's say, spaceship Earth, okay, to use Buckminster Fuller's term. There's like, we're all on the same planet. We don't have a, as they say, planet B. And your generation, Greta Thunberg says, what's the point of going to school if you're robbing us of our future? So we're all on spaceship Earth together this is what I would call an all hands on deck moment. We need everybody on deck. And actually, the younger people have a kind of freshness and openness of mind that is exactly what's called for in this moment, because of its newness and freshness and openness. And so I would, just really, I just applaud what you both are doing, because for me, as an older person, you represent the possible in a very, very challenging time. It's really the Four Noble Truths all over again. What are we facing if we diagnose the planet? We're facing dukkha. And what is the source of the dukkha? The etiology of it, it's the human mind when it doesn't know itself. We've been so industrious, we've polluted the entire planet and given it a fever. So this is all manageable if we take care of what most needs taking care of. Now, I realize that we're like almost out of time and we didn't get to all the questions. And I don't know what you want to do about that. I can stay for another few minutes, but I can't stay for more than 15 more minutes because I have another appointment.
Sure, Doctor. Thank you so much for answering the questions today. But before we conclude today's dialogue, we would like to invite you to guide us through a short meditation for a couple of minutes.
I'd be happy to do that. And the first thing I'll say is that our whole conversation has been a meditation, as far as I'm concerned. That sometimes meditation looks like nothing or stillness or non-doing, but sometimes it looks like people engaging with each other from the purity and openness of their own hearts and what you could call not knowing mind. So there's nothing that's happened in our time together that's not been part of the meditation. And so from my point of view, mindfulness is really life itself. It's like every moment is a moment to be fully present and come to the moment with open-hearted spaciousness. But there are times when it's helpful to just kind of drop into the domain of being in stillness, or at least still the body. And eyes open's fine. Mindfulness wouldn't be very useful if we close our eyes, but it's also helpful sometimes to just close the eyes and settle into the experience of the body. I'll assume that everybody's sitting, so dropping into the experience of sitting here breathing. And if you want to think of this as a formal meditation, of course, I could ring bells that you can follow the sound of the bells into the silence. But I won't do that because then it kind of makes it special apart from life itself, which, as I said, is the real meditation. But seeing if you can just sit in a posture that embodies wakefulness and dignity. Whatever that means to you. And can you be aware of the whole body sitting here, breathing? Because if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, there's no doubt whatsoever that there's breathing going on. We can't say that you're breathing because it happens during sleep, and whoever you are, you're not making the breath happen. But we do say, I'm breathing. So it's interesting to ask, who is that that's claiming to be doing the breathing? But can you feel? So we're not interested in thinking about the breathing that's going on. We're interested in seeing if we can feel this breath coming into the body and this breath leaving the body. And experimenting with riding or surfing on the waves of the breath someplace in the body where the sensations are most vivid, like the belly, for instance, or the nostrils. And then just dropping into a silent wakefulness that's not even perturbed by talk or sounds. And to recognize that this silent wakefulness is yours and it's available to you whenever you are willing to stop and drop into what we've been calling the domain of being, with no agenda other than to simply be present with whatever's unfolding, good, bad, or ugly, disturbing, not disturbing, happy, unhappy. None of that's a problem. Those are like weather patterns in the mind. And we're the sky itself that holds all the weather. And that sky-like aspect of mind, or space itself like aspect of mind, is pure awareness. And you already have it. You always have it. It's more you than anything else, we might say. And so can you find a way to rest in your own awareness? So although we use the breath as an anchor for our attention, the objects of our attention are not what mindfulness or meditation is about, although they can be very helpful in stabilizing and orienting us. It's the attending itself. And this attending gives rise to awareness, pure awareness. It doesn't make it happen. It reveals that it's been here all along, but our attention has been carried away, caught up, captured someplace else. So every time your attention gets captured with a thought or a feeling, the future, the past, you just recognize what's on your mind, and you come back to your belly or come back to your body somehow and to your breathing, just to stabilize the attention, and then open back up to the awareness, because the awareness of breathing is awareness. But the awareness itself is as vast as the universe. There's no center, no periphery. Can't even call it yours, but it is, in some sense, the source of all possibility. When we let our doing come out of this domain of non-doing or being. And for now, we're resting here in the domain of being, falling awake moment by moment by moment. Mind wanders, see what's on your mind, bring it back. Mind wanders 1,000 times, each time seeing what's on your mind, escorting it back to your belly, to your body, to the breath. And here we are again in awareness. So awareness itself can become more and more our default setting, our default mode. We default to well-being, to timelessness, to recognizing our own wholeness, complete just as we are. No matter what the narratives are that are moving through the mind. And this practice is portable, so you can do it on the bus, you can do it walking down the street. It's not really a doing, it's a being. So then life itself becomes the meditation practice, the love affair. But it does help if you develop a discipline to sit every day, maybe early in the morning, or do a body scan in bed before you even get out of bed. so that you're tuning the instrument before you take it out on the road for the day. And you're not trying to get anyplace else. You're simply reminding yourself and rebodying yourself in awareness. And then life itself becomes the meditative curriculum. And your meditation practice is a love affair with the beauty that is you, without any narcissistic element to it. Because your heart and your beauty are boundless, just like awareness. So when you're ready, maybe taking a slow, deep, more intentional breath in. If your eyes have been closed, I invite you to open them. Noticing that awareness is seamless. So eyes open, eyes closed, me guiding, total silence. It's all one seamless continuity of wakefulness. And there's no problem with the mind wandering. Remember, it's just like the ocean, it waves at the surface, but when you're aware of your own thinking or anxiety or depression or anything else, the awareness is actually a refuge. It's a new dimension that you can inhabit. It's not an escape from anything, but it's actually a place where you can leverage new ways of being and new ways of seeing. So we'll stop there. You could say we'll stop here, but actually there's no stopping. And I feel like having said something about bells, what I'll say is, our coming together for just this time together has been like the kiss of these bells. This hour and 15 minutes that we've spent together has been, limited in time. But what our conversation has been pointing to has no boundaries, no limits, and will exist on the internet, presumably forever. But when it's discovered by whoever you are who is watching this right now, please know that this is really beyond time and space. And it's not just a gift to you, but in some sense, you're a gift to it and to all of us when you bring the boundless spaciousness of your own beauty and your own heart to the practice, whether it's formally taking your seat or whether it's putting your shoulder to the wheel of moving the world towards greater sanity and love. And I want to once again just honor Dr. Ariadne and say happy birthday to you and congratulations. And I still find myself feeling like I'd now like to have an hour-long conversation directly with you, having tasted the profundity of your granddaughter's wisdom, and deep congratulations not only on your birthday but on the karmic flourishing in your family, which is really, in my experience, quite amazing and lovely.
Thank you so much for the wonderful meditation. It was really awakening, and I think it really helped us to gather our thoughts and to be aware of the present moment. And before you leave, we have a small request. We prepared a short video clip on what Vishnuniketan does. We would like to share that with you if you do have time.
Of course.
We hope you enjoyed that video, Doctor. And now,
Wow, it's so profound. It's so profound.
thank you so much. I would like
Extraordinarily moving to see so many people practicing as a result of all of the love that and structure that you've brought to your world.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Definitely, I think through meditation, we're able to engage a lot of people in Sri Lanka and teach them the holistic approach to things like motherhood, which is beneficial for them in their day-to-day lives. And coming to the end of this very insightful session, I would like to invite Dr. Charika to share some closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Tiara. I think today's dialogue is most profound, especially I think directly the whole episode speaks to the young hearts and minds. Thank you, Dr. Kabat-Zinn, for gracing this final episode with so much love, enthusiasm, and commitment. You have always been a great source of inspiration for us for nearly 2 decades. We have learned so much from you, and we have applied what we learned from you in our mindfulness retreat at Vishwaniketan. I also would like to let you know that you have been very generous in sharing even resource material with us. I remember with much gratitude when you sent us the unpublished chapter of the new edition of your book, Coming to Our Senses, for us to share with some high-profile participants of our mindfulness retreats. You are a household name at Vishwaniketan and in our programs. I sincerely hope that we will be blessed with an opportunity to invite you and Mrs. Maila Kabat-Zinn to Sri Lanka one day. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Tiara and Sanara, for your unwavering commitment to this series over a period of 10 months. You enrich the intergenerational dialogue with the knowledge and wisdom you have already acquired at your young age. And also you have surely inspired many children and adults alike through this series. Niven is remembered with much gratitude for substituting Tiara for episode number 10 with Most Venerable Bhante Vimala. For me personally, it has been a fascinating journey to have had the honor of liaising with all the distinguished speakers from different parts of the world. It is my responsibility to remember with much gratitude the world-renowned speakers of this series. Please permit me to mention their names. Most Venerable Bhante Mahinda, Dr. Ching Hung Gui, Dr. Jack Cornfield, Dr. Vandana Shiva, Dr. Daniel Goldman, Dr. Sunita Krishnan, Mr. Joseph Goldstein, Ms. Sharon Salzberg, Dr. Tara Brack, Most Venerable Bhante Vimala, Professor Richard Davidson, and last but not least, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. I know for certain that all these distinguished speakers accepted our invitation for one special reason, that is to express their appreciation to Dr. Aryaratna for his lifetime service to humanity. My salutation to you on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the A.T. Aryaratna Charitable Trust, the governing body of Vishwaniketan. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Aryaratna for connecting with us every time, even though he has been challenged with many physical limitations over the past 3 months. And we are so grateful to him for being a source of inspiration to all of us, for all generations, and for being with us throughout this series of dialogues. A very special word of thanks to Sanji for presenting us the theme, A String of Pearls, for this series. Many are remembered with much gratitude. Madhushan's commitment has been extraordinary. All the flyers and videos for this series were developed by Madhushan. I extend my sincere thanks to Kala, Niven, Krishna, Mrs. Sushila Gunawardena, Brother Michael, for all their support and assistance through the series. May all of you be well, happy, and peaceful. Thank you very much.